Hi and welcome to the channel. Now today's video is about receivers and receivers in 1977 or thereabouts. It's going to be around those years, and this is a magazine called HiFi Choice here in the UK, and I think it's especially interesting because the person doing the review was Angus McKenzie. Now he was held in high regard throughout the world actually back then. If you want to type his name into Google, you're going to find some very interesting information about him. So I thought it's great to bring this to the channel because this is probably the golden period in the 70s to 80s, you know, that kind of period, 70 to 80, maybe going in a little bit into the 80s, that a lot of people call the golden period of HiFi. And don't forget, this is a budget channel, so I'm going to be looking at the budget items. I think the cheapest receiver starts off at about £90, it goes up to nearly £200 thereabouts, and that's probably what you're going to pay for most of this stuff today, them kind of price brackets. So if you're interested in one of these receivers, or you're looking at one of these receivers on eBay, etc., because they do come up quite often, there's some well-known ones on there in this particular review, one of them being the Sansui 331 I've got here. But remember, if you are buying any of this stuff and looking for any of this stuff, just because it gets a good review and etc., just be a bit careful. Don't pay over the top for it. Keep it within the kind of price range. Like I say, these kind of range from about £90 to £200, and that's where you should be paying from now. You shouldn't be paying much over the top from now. Unless it's an absolute mint one and you really need it, kind of thing. So just be a bit careful. Don't get carried away if you are looking at these. And also, you may find a bargain. You may find one of these going quite cheap that's held in, got quite a good review here. So okay, so that's it now. If you are looking and you're going to say to me, Mick, I can't see it, it's on my phone, the writing's very small. I do a little bit of an audio commentary over the top, picking up the basic points of these particular receivers. But if you are interested in a particular unit, I suggest that you go and watch this video on your TV, where you're going to put up the old page and you can read some more detail, get a little bit more extra information before making your purchase. You may be able to discount some or to include some that you was interested in. So that's it. So the video is going to be coming up straight after. And right at the end of the video, I'm going to have a little chart of what I've just read out, and there's a little bit more information on these particular individual units as well. So that's it. So the video is going to be coming up. For now, I'll say thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Okay, the first receiver is Akai AA-1020. This retailed for £145, and we've got the distortion as average, the noise as fair, and the actual sound quality as average. But the write-up goes to say this is a strongly recommended receiver which performs well on a strong aerial signal but poor on weak ones. It has useful facilities and is very good value for money. A rather low power output, but still a best buy. And the next receiver is Akai AA-1030. Now distortion is average, the noise is poor, and the actual sound quality is average too. Now it goes on to say this is not such a good value receiver as the Akai 1020, and there's some tuner problems, but the amplifier worked well and reasonable value for money. And the next receiver is the Armstrong 626, retailing at £195, with the distortion being fair, the noise being excellent, and the sound being average. And goes on to say this model is also available as an FM only unit, the 625. It has a preset stations and excellent filters. It can be recommended, but with a few problems we encountered with the amplifier. Note that it runs rather hot, is good value for money, though some areas is a little bit disappointing. Now onto the Audiotronic LR-2626 that retailed for £140, with the distortion being average, the noise being fair, and the sound quality being average. Goes on to say quite a good value for money, but some response problems on the tuner section. Listen to it before making a purchase. Next one is Eagle R6500, retailing at £150, with the distortion being good, the noise being bad, and the overall sound average, with a write-up saying that good value for money since it has a high output capability, a poor tuner distortion, and poor output is. Though there were bad points with the Eagle, it's recommended with caution, providing the improvements
are forthcoming. So obviously they promised some improvements on this receiver, but whether they actually did them or not is a different story. But that's how he received it, and that's how he rated this particular receiver. Next we go on to the Goodmans 120, retailing at £155, with the distortion being average, the noise being good, and the sound quality being good on this receiver too. Now on the 120 it says rather poor economics and appearance were disappointing, but the sound quality was generally very good. But watch the quality control, recommended with caution, but have a look at it. So there you go, that's the Goodmans 120 there. Now we're going on to the Goodmans Module 90, which retailed £140, with the distortion being fair, the noise being very poor, but the sound overall good. And the report on this one was 4 FM preset stations are provided on this budget price receiver, but performance was not particularly good. Good value for money though for some of its facilities. So that's at Goodmans. Okay, next up is the Harman Kardon 430, and this retails for £195, so right at the top end price rise with our £200 limit. The distortion was very good, the noise was bad, but the overall sound was very good. With reporting this model worked and measured very well, but the facilities were rather lacking, making it a relatively poor value for money receiver. Nevertheless, he recommends this Harman Kardon 430. Okay, we're going to the Hitachi SR-503L, retailing at £155, with the distortion being average, the noise being excellent, the overall sound though being poor, and goes on to say this receiver has too many problems for any recommendations to be considered. Tune response and output transient problems were particularly troublesome. So not very good, this Hitachi, by the looks of it. Okay, we go on to the JVC JR-S50, retailing it at just £90, so a very cheap receiver here, with the distortion being average, the noise being very poor, and the sound quality being average. Goes on to say strongly recommended for its very good performance at a modest cost, but the volume and balance control is very annoying. Cannot be switched onto mono, but measured comparatively well, and it's a best buy here. I should imagine the price comes into it very much so at just £90. Okay, we go on to the Pioneer SX-550, retailing at £150. The distortion was good, the noise was good, and the overall sound was good. It goes on to say, although this receiver is good value for money, problems may be experienced when receiving weak stations. Nevertheless, recommended for all its good points. So that's the Pioneer SX-550. Now on to the Sansui 331, retailing at £110. Now the distortion was fair, the noise was fair, the overall sound was good, and the write-up says a low-powered receiver which performed and sounded comparatively well for its low price. Strongly recommended as a best buy. That's the Sansui 331. Okay, now we're going through a couple of models up from the 331 to the Sansui 551, retailing at £145, with the distortion being fair, the noise being very poor. Overall sound though was good, and the write-up for the 551 was as follows. This is a relatively low price model and can be recommended for a generally reasonable performance at its cost. Recommended as a good value for money, but not quite a best buy. So that's the Sansui 551 there. Okay, we go on to the Sansui 5050 now, retailing at £195, right near our £200 bracket, with the distortion being very good, the noise being fair, and the overall sound quality being good. Goes on to say, unfortunately, the tuning was issier than average on a strong stereo stations, but in other respects this model was liked. Relatively small improvements in performance would be recommended. This receiver is still good value. So there you go, that's the Sansui 5050. Now we move on to the Sanyo JCX 2300K, retailing at £150, with the distortion being very good, the noise being bad, and the write-up say although reasonably priced, there are too many problems in the tuner section for a recommendation to be considered. So there you go. Okay, we're going to a couple of Sonys now. The first one, the STR 2800, retailing for £150, with the distortion being poor, the noise being very poor, and the sound quality being average. Goes on to say too many tuner and other problems caused and a recommendation to be withheld. Nevertheless, fairly reasonable value for money, this one. I'm going to pop up a model or two here to the 3800 by Sony, the STR 3800, with the distortion being fair, the noise being very poor, and again the sound quality being average. Goes on to say the sound quality here was below average, and again too many problems. Calls for recommendation to be withheld. Not a good value for money receiver. So that is the Sony STR 3008. Move along to the Toshiba SA-320, retailing at £140, with the distortion being average, noise good, and the overall sound quality being fair. And the review goes on to say, provided Toshiba corrected the tuner response and outlined in the review, this model would be reasonable value for money, but nevertheless a little hiss on the FM. The sound quality was below average though, and would cause a recommendation to be withheld. So take into a chance that they actually mend these problems or correct these problems as per review. And sometimes probably these firms do, and again sometimes they probably just say yeah they're going to do it, but maybe don't. So just something to bear in mind maybe with Toshiba. Okay, sigh of relief once again. This is the last one. This is the Trio KR4070, retailing for £190, so quite an expensive receiver again here in this range. So okay, the distortion was very good, the noise was very good, and the overall sound quality was good. Goes on to say this is a recommended receiver, measured and sounded quite well, although a few minor problems to keep out of the Best Buy class, clearly better than the earlier Trio models. So there you go, gets a recommendation there, the Trio KR4070.